now. So, hello everybody, welcome to the Sandro Linux community podcast. It is Friday the 13th, so who knows what's going to happen. It is another day for tech news, so why don't we just jump in to the first story. So, the Indian government has sent out another emergency alert. So, they've been testing the emergency alert system in India with these emergency alerts being sent out. So, of course, recently there's been quite a few countries, including the UK, and I believe there might have been a few emergency alert tests around the US, but this is the latest one in India. So, of course, they're trying to test these emergency alert systems to check whether people can get these notifications on their phones. So, if an actual emergency event took place, they would be able to know about it, and potentially that could save lives. Because people will be able to tell when a natural disaster or another event of that kind happens. So yeah. Of course, some people aren't really a big fan of getting loud alerts on their phones, and of course, if you're asleep, I mean, I don't know who's asleep at 11:30 a.m. in the morning, but if you are, and you didn't know about this, then you would have been woken up, so that would have been quite annoying. And of course, in India, there's a lot of people, so this would have affected a lot of people, and yeah. So, it's another country testing out the emergency alert system, but of course, because of how big India is, it's probably a bit harder to get the word out about these emergency alert tests, and it's more likely that people may not know about them happening, and then be quite frightened when they do. But yeah, do either of you two, Farmer Josh or Piggis, have any thoughts on this?
No, not really.
Okay, so let's also, why do you just send nothing in the chat?
Uh,
Because you can, I guess. Anyway, let's continue on to the next story. So, we're going into the iPhone news. So, today, we've only got one story in the iPhone news, but that is the fact that we previously reported about the iOS 17.0.3 update fixing the overheating problems. However, it turns out these problems have not actually been resolved, and these issues have persisted, and some new issues have actually arisen. So apparently, Sam Harmon, a engineering team lead in the UK, reported that he didn't start having overheating problems until he updated his 15 Pro Max to iOS 17.0.3. And since then, he's been experiencing overheating issues when he has used his camera to take photos and shoot video. So similarly, a user on the Mac Rumors forum has reported having overheating issues when using the MagSafe fast charging session on the during a MagSafe fast charging session on the popular Belkin 3-in-1 Boost Charge Pro. And apparently they've been using this charger for 3 years, and they'd had no issues prior to this, but apparently this new update had caused some of these overheating problems. So apparently, some of the overheating problems have been resolved by this update. However, it's disputed whether this has fixed more problems that it's actually caused, or whether this update has actually been bad for iPhone users. So yeah, what do you think, guys? I mean, I personally think that, it's a bit silly putting out an update, potentially not fully testing it beforehand, and then just letting the users try it out and figure out that it still has overheating problems. I mean, maybe on a base level, they had an idea that, this fixes some of the problems, but maybe they didn't fully understand some of the use cases that people have for their iPhones.
Yeah. Didn't Apple announce that it wasn't a problem at all in the beginning?
Yeah, that's often the Apple way, I think. I think they often will just say, no, this isn't a problem, this isn't a thing, and then eventually they'll concede that it is actually a problem and that users aren't just holding it wrong or whatever. And
then they fix it, but they didn't really fix it. They
Yeah.
just sort of made it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah, so
I mean, it seems to me the only way you could fix that to a software update would be basically turning down the charge rate.
yeah. I think they tried.
Yeah.
Wasn't it something to do with the modem? I think it was something to do with limiting the modem or something to prevent overheating.
Yeah.
But clearly that hasn't worked, at least not totally, given that there are these reports of more issues occurring. So, yeah.
Apple they should do a bit more testing before they announce
Yeah.
new updates like this.
Yeah. I guess they might have been rushing just because they were worried that if they didn't do this update quickly, then people would quickly kind of start criticizing Apple for having these phones overheating. So maybe if they thought they had a quick fix and that everything was just going to be fixed and they would no longer encounter this problem, but clearly it hasn't turned out like that. Anyway, let's move on to the next story. So we're now moving into the Android section of the phone news. So Honor has announced the third foldable of this year. So apparently they've already announced two before, but they're now announcing the Magic VS 2. So they're launching that in China. But they haven't actually announced when they're... I don't think they've announced when they're going to launch this internationally. So according to Honor, the phone is meant to ship on October the 17th for Chinese customers, but I don't think we'll see this outside of China, at least for a little bit. But yeah, a lot of Chinese companies launch first in China and then they eventually launch over in international markets. So honestly, this isn't much of a surprise, but it's cool to see some more foldables, I guess. Does anybody have any thoughts on this?
Either of y'all actually used a foldable?
No.
I've held one, I've used it just to act like a shop, yes. But not as a daily driver thing, no. I mean, I've been to a Samsung experience.
I've always wondered how well that works out long term.
Yeah.
I mean, how easy is it to like break it?
Yeah, I don't think it's as durable as most handhelds, but I guess you might take the trade-off, because, you might like that tablet form factor, and if you just want to have a small little tablet and be able to kind of, I don't know, if you want to watch content, maybe you want to watch like Netflix or whatever, then it could be a trade-off that you're willing to make. But if you care about the durability of your phone, for example, I wouldn't trade durability for more screen space. But yeah, if you're wanting to make that trade-off, I guess foldables might be a good option, although they do cost a lot of money. Moving on to the next story, the Pixel 8 reportedly doesn't have a feature that's been around on Android for a long time. So the photosphere mode has been removed from the Pixel 8, so it's no longer, so apparently the Pixel 8 does not ship with this feature, and it's been around since 2012, this feature, and it was meant to allow you to photograph all around your surroundings in a kind of 3D fashion. So, of course, this being removed is kind of a bit of a feature update when it comes to the camera, and personally, I didn't use the photosphere feature much, but it was a kind of cool feature, and I did use it during some of the first times I took photos on Android, so that's kind of, yeah, I don't really know how many people would have used this feature, but it's kind of sad that Google decided to remove it. Have either of you used the photosphere feature on Android, or yeah?
Like just once, just to test it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I keep the cameras taped up on my phone, so.
Okay. Yes, so I think the last time I used the photosphere thing was like 2015, so not exactly a regular user, but yes. Anyway, continuing on to the next story here. So Android is reportedly going to offer a easier way to swap active SIMs. So Google has confirmed that they are going to do this in a future build of Android. So apparently they're going to use the quick settings, so there'll be a new quick settings toggle to switch between SIMs. So this is quite helpful if you use multiple SIM cards, or you use an eSIM and, you know, a physical SIM. Now you'll be able to swap between the SIM cards. So for people who use multiple SIMs for different purposes, this will be a cool feature. And yeah, right now you have to mess about in the settings, so it might be nice just to have a toggle which you could enable. Do either of you have any thoughts?
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be nice, because I keep two phones, one personal and one work, and usually I just check for text messages on the work phone if they need to try to get a hold of me on it. And that'd be nice to be able to just switch over to another SIM and let text messages come through and take care of that and then switch back.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. Though to be fair, if you have two SIMs in, you can still get the text messages. It's just like you can't. You can use two SIM cards at the same time. I mean, like, you can just swap between which ones you're texting with, usually. At least in my experience. I don't know, is that different on different phones or something?
It may be different on different phones. For me right now, it's just easier to keep two phones. So I had a dual SIM phone at one point, but...
Yeah, I have a dual SIM phone, and I can just switch between the two SIM cards. So I'll receive text from both, and then I can just swap SIMs, swap which SIM I'm sending messages with, and swap which SIM I'm calling with, and swap which SIM I'm doing data stuff with. So yeah, personally, this isn't a big problem for me, but I can see the appeal. And yeah, I do often have dual SIMs. So yeah. Especially with switching SIM cards to do the mobile reviews and stuff. yeah, I switch operators quite often. So yeah. Anyway, continuing on to the next story. So Google is apparently introducing. Apparently, they've introduced a new set of ringtones. So they've introduced the Gems ringtones to the Pixel phones. So this is a new collection of sounds for notifications, ringtones, and alarm tones. So this is, I guess, a cool addition if you want some new sounds for your Pixel phone. And people on Pixel 8s and older compatible models can head over to the settings to set their respective ringer, notification, and alarm sounds for the new Gems collection. So I guess if you like these sounds, it will be cool. If you don't like them, then I guess you can just set your own ringtone or whatever. But it's cool to see new ringtones being added to a phone. Yeah. It's always better to have more ringtones than less, I guess. Anybody have any thoughts? I mean, it's kind of a minor story, but you know, still one worth covering anyway.
Not really anything, no.
Okay, so let's continue on. So we're now moving into the PC news section. So it should really be the chip news section, given that both stories are related to chips. So former ARM China executives have established a new government-backed chip farm. So apparently this chief executive from ARM China has now joined this new company. I'm not going to try and pronounce it because I don't really want to butcher any pronunciation today. But apparently this company is now one of the major ARM licensees in China, and apparently they're a government-backed operation. So, of course, this kind of factors in to the Chinese government's ambition to become semiconductor self-sufficient by 2025, I think. And of course, it's not really likely to happen, but of course, they are aiming to increase their semiconductor production, and this is quite a major step towards it. So yeah, there's more information on this article, but the long and short of it is that this is a new company backed by the Chinese government, which is making ARM chips, and it's gonna probably compete with some of the Western firms. Or, I guess, yeah, TSMC is kind of a Western firm, I mean, Taiwanese firm. Anyway, yeah, does anybody have any thoughts on this story about these executives moving from, of course, ARM China, which they used to be in, but now they're moving to this new state-backed enterprise?
Did you mention that they specialize in server-grade processors?
That's a good aspect of the story that I was not covering there. So of course, server chips are quite kind of important for kind of being semiconductor self-sufficient. So they, of course, do want to have different types of chip production. So I guess they're specializing in that. Is there anything else that you would any kind of not connotations to that, but kind of, yeah. Is there any other kind of anything else you can think of about them?
No, I haven't really read anything of it, no.
Anyway, moving on to the next story about, we seem to be talking as well as about chips, we also seem to be talking about countries which aren't countries which aren't kind of allies of the US, so Russia and China here, but yeah, so Russia is apparently aiming to mass produce 28 nanometer chips by 2027 and 40 nanometer by 2030. So, of course, the TSMC has already reached 40 nanometer. In fact, they reached that quite a while ago, and now they're now planning to reach 2 nanometer by 2026. TSMC are. So, of course, Russia wanting to produce 28 nanometer chips by 2027 isn't that ambitious, but of course it is for Russia because their current capacity for producing chips is not that great, but of course they're trying to invest in semiconductor production, and apparently they're spending 420 billion rubles on fabrication technologies. And apparently that amounts to about $5 billion. So, apparently, they aim to ramp up local chip production using a 19 nanometer fabrication process by the end of the year. So, of course, this really isn't that impressive. Although it is definitely a step forward for their semiconductor manufacturing. But TSMC and other Western firms are quite a bit further ahead when it comes to semiconductor production and fabrication. Does anybody have any thoughts on that story? It's kind of self-explanatory, I guess, but yeah. Okay, let's continue on. So, we're now covering the Linux distro releases. So, why don't we cover the Raspberry Pi OS release? So, Piggis was talking about this before the show, about the fact that Wayfire is being added, has been added to Raspberry Pi OS. So if you're on the Raspberry Pi 4 or 5 and you update to this latest version of Raspberry Pi OS, you'll be using Wayland instead of X11 for your display server, and for your compositor, you'll be using Wayfire. So, of course, previously there was the OpenBox window manager, but that's also no longer a thing when it comes to Raspberry Pi OS on the Raspberry Pi 4 and 5. So, of course, there's been quite a move to Wayland recently. Because X11 is kind of seen as being more out of date and not as good. But it's interesting to see Raspberry Pi move over their latest hardware to the new Wayland kind of Wayfire. Moving over to Wayland as a display server, because a lot of different distros have been doing so, and now doing this on their ARM-based device is quite interesting. But yeah, any thoughts, Piggis? Since you're the Linux user over here, I guess.
Well, it's interesting because, as you said, they used OpenBox window manager before.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of optimized to be very, lightweight, whereas, Wayfire focuses a lot on animations and stuff, so...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to be fair, with some of their latest hardware, maybe they're caring slightly less about the lightweight aspect.
Yeah.
and maybe trying to focus a bit more on, having a more elegant desktop experience. So I can see why they're making that move, given the current hardware has a lot more power behind it than their original Raspberry Pi, or the Pi 2 or the Pi 3. Of course, they're going to try and get that hardware over to Wayfire. However, they might find it quite difficult, and it might not be the best idea when it comes to... when it comes to actually being able to run stuff and not have your Raspberry Pi totally resource drained.
I guess that's why they just set it for the 4 and 5.
But yeah, so another Linux distro release, which is kind of closely tied in with this Raspberry Pi OS release. So Ubuntu 23.10 has been released with support for the Raspberry Pi 5 and RISC-V based SBCs. So apparently when the Sci-Fi Hi-5 Pro P550 is launched, it will be supported at release. So Ubuntu will support it when it comes out. I've not heard of that device before, but apparently it will be supporting it. So that's cool. And of course it'll be supporting this new Raspberry Pi. So if you update to this new Ubuntu release and you're using a Raspberry Pi, you can now use it on your Pi 5. So that's pretty cool. And of course Ubuntu supporting RISC-V platforms is also a pretty cool addition. So that's pretty nice. Now, one thing that I nearly forgot to mention here, software such as LibreOffice, Thunderbird, Shotwell, and Rhythmbox will no longer be pre-installed by default. So now you have to go and select the expanded installation option during installation to actually get these pieces of software. And I guess this is good from a being more lightweight point of view. I mean, Ubuntu's already known for being a bit bloated, so maybe it's better to just take out some of the apps by default. Maybe they don't need all of these apps. Maybe they don't care about writing documents. Maybe they don't care about sending emails using a desktop client. There's all sorts of stuff that you might not actually need in there, and so maybe this just simplifies things. And if you want the applications and you didn't install them using the expanded installation, you can of course just install it using the App Store, so it really doesn't matter either way. Has anybody got any thoughts on that?
I think it's good that they have finally decided to ditch the packages to as installed as defaults.
What do you think, Farmer Josh? If you have any thoughts?
Nah, not on that particularly.
But,
I did hear though on this latest release of Ubuntu that they're having to redo some of the foreign language ISOs due to hate speech.
Okay.
Yeah, because those programs are pretty heavy, and most people probably don't need all of those programs.
Yeah.
And if you need them, it just a simple install.
And
it also.
Oh, sorry. And it also, yeah.
No. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So we're moving on to the gaming news now. So Counter-Strike 2 is apparently being discontinued on older hardware and macOS. So apparently they're doing this to support, to basically focus on 64-bit Windows and Linux. So Valve have stated this as the official reason, but you can only play CSGO on your older hardware or your Mac until January the 1st, 2024. So there's not really much notice here. I mean, it's only giving people 2 months to actually say goodbye to Counter-Strike on their device. So that's kind of sad for people gaming on Mac or these older devices. But, of course, it might be good for them focusing their development efforts on Windows and Linux so they can support both platforms properly. However, apparently you will be able to get a full refund until December the 1st, 2023. So you've got to be quick here, given you've only got about 2 months to do so. And that's not a lot of notice, really. But if you are a Mac or older hardware player, then please make sure to get the refund so you don't end up with a useless copy of Counter-Strike. Also, apparently, you'll be able to get access to the legacy version of CSGO. You'll continue to be able to access that, but full support will end on January the 1st. Yeah. Any thoughts as a CSGO slash CS2 player, Pigus?
Nah, not really. I've covered it.
Mm-hmm. Do you play CSGO at all, Farmer Josh? I mean, I don't, so you know.
Nope, I don't.
Okay. I was guessing you didn't, but you know, you never know. You can't assume these things.
But you know, it's not even a percent of the user base that they don't support now.
Yeah, so I mean that's still a decent percentage they don't support, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to the next story here. Microsoft is apparently they've closed the Activision Blizzard deal, and they said that they will keep Call of Duty on PlayStation for 10 years, so that's their pledge. And apparently the UK CMA approved Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard. So they will apparently add Activision Blizzard and King to their game studios. So now if you're playing Candy Crush and you're giving all the money to the Candy Crush in-app purchases and you're spending all your money on whatever the currency is called again, then now you're giving all your money to Microsoft. But yeah, so of course this is quite a big news story, given that they basically have a lot of the studios under their umbrella now. So of course some people could argue this is Microsoft trying to monopolize the gaming industry, or maybe, you know, Sony and Microsoft trying to duopolize, or if you include Nintendo, triopolize? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so of course, some people will argue this is anti-competitive. I mean, it does mean that if you're on Game Pass, you'll be able to access some of these games without having to pay. But this has been quite a long regulatory process when it comes to the UK CMA. So the Competition and Market... Is it Competition Markets Authority or Competition and Markets Authority? I don't remember, but they are the regulatory body in the UK for approving these kind of acquisitions, and of course they raised some objections. They were worried about, apparently about cloud gaming or something, given that they gave Ubisoft rights to do cloud gaming with certain titles, and then suddenly it was fine. But so now they've approved this deal. Of course, Activision Blizzard got into a lot of controversy around the sexual harassment, and there's a lot of details to that story. I'm not going to get into it right now, but it's cool. It's just interesting to see that Microsoft has closed this deal, and we'll just have to see what happens with it. Do either of you have thoughts on this story? I mean, it's quite a big one, to be honest.
Yes. The 10-year promise that Microsoft gives out seems a bit too much a promise.
Yeah, they can probably just go back on that promise potentially. And who knows what happens after that 10 years. I mean, they could just decide, oh yeah, only on Xbox and PC now. Or only on Xbox, or whatever their current strategy is. So...
Are they talking about like the whole franchise of Call of Duty, or...?
I don't know. I think they're just saying Call of Duty in general will be kept on PS for 10 years. But, they haven't made the same pledge about any other Activision Blizzard games. So, all of them could go exclusive at any point. And of course, they could just go back on their promises. I mean, I'm not sure if that would be violating, their agreement with the regulator or whatever. But I'm not sure on that, whether it was a binding promise or whether it was a pinky promise. Yeah, so we'll just have to see what happens with that. Maybe somebody could comment in the live chat, or maybe in the comments afterwards if you're watching the recording. Do you know if this is a binding agreement, or if it's just some sort of, pinky promise, not really binding? We say that this will happen, and we know, yeah. They could, of course, go back on something like that, but they couldn't go back on a binding agreement. Anyway, let's move on to the next story. So Twitch is apparently now blocking people from watching streams after watching channels after they've been banned from them. So apparently you can, of course, just watch Twitch without your account. So if you got banned from a certain creator, you can just watch without your account. But this is an interesting step that Twitch has took to block people who have been banned from a stream, and just block them from watching the stream altogether. I don't really know what to comment upon this. Of course, there are some creepy people out there, so, if you block them from watching your stream, I mean, it's not particularly effective, but sure. Anyway.
It's kind of like useless. Like, it
Yes.
doesn't really do anything.
Yes. Also, if you're a total, if you're a bit of a creep or whatever, then you'll just log out. It's just very easy, and it's probably the first thing you'd think of. So yeah, honestly, quite an ineffective measure. That is unless you IP block people, but then again, that could raise its own issues. Anyway, so continuing on to the next story. This is the story we headlined with on the podcast. So the Starlink story. I was close to using the Microsoft story as a headline, but Piggy's convinced me that this is a good story to lead with, and I agree. So this is quite a interesting story. So apparently, Starlink have updated their website. They've got a new webpage which is promoting its upcoming Starlink direct-to-call service that will apparently offer cellular service to existing LTE phones via satellite. So apparently text will be coming in 2024, voice and data in 2025, and IoT in 2025. So apparently they plan to, Elon Musk's space-based company, Starlink, plan to partner with T-Mobile on this project. And apparently it will have will most likely have relatively slow terrestrial speeds, standards. Oh, it will apparently be likely to be relatively slow by terrestrial standards, with speeds at between 2 to 4 megabits per second, but its benefit will be a breadth of coverage. So this isn't really Of course, partnering with T-Mobile means that this isn't really totally new technology, but of course this is another service offered by Starlink, so if you're within the Starlink ecosystem, this could be a cool service. Do you guys have any thoughts on this?
I'm wondering how they're gonna implement the voice and data by 2025.
Yeah.
Because like the reviews you heard about Starlinks is like it's very high latency.
I mean, yeah, Farmer Josh, as somebody who lives somewhere rural, I'm guessing. I mean, I don't know, but how do you find internet? As in, do you think
As
Starlink's an
far as
interesting
I'm
proposition?
concerned, the whole Starlink thing ain't really going to work too well until they get Starship going. It's going to take getting a hell of a lot more satellites up there than what they already got. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, for now, I think Starlink's kind of a cool idea, but it's not that practical. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of cool to be able to roam around with internet and stuff, but not exactly practical.
Yeah, like Pig has said, you got the latency issues on it, which the latency on it isn't as bad as geostationary satellite internet, but it's still there. So.
But yeah, apparently the service will be available, according to this T-Mobile's press release, practically everywhere in continental USA, Hawaii, parts of Alaska, Puerto Rico, and territorial waters, even outside of the signal of T-Mobile's network. So yeah. Anyway, let's move on to the UK news section. So we're moving into the UK mobile and cellular, not mobile and cellular, broadband and cellular news. So it's all cellular this week. So all of these stories are coming from ISP Review when it comes to the UK. So the first story we're covering is the mobile operator O2 boosting data on the pay-as-you-go plans. So previously, £10 would get you 7 gigs of data. Now it gets you 8 gigabytes of data. £15 now gets you 25 gigabytes of data, up from 20 gigabytes of data. £20 now gets you 40 gigabytes of data, up from 30 gigabytes of data. And the £30 bundle now gives you 125 gigabytes of data, up from 100 gigs of data. So that's a cool update, I guess. Apparently you can now get this more data on O2. I mean, periodically, mobile networks up the amount of data you can get on pay-as-you-go. I'm personally a pay-as-you-go customer, currently with O2. That's just because I was going and doing, I went to Belgium, so, I needed roaming. But I'm going to switch back to EE because right now their coverage isn't as good as EE. I was reviewing EE, so I pretty much done 12 months of using EE, so I'm going to actually put out a review about EE soon. But O2 do have some cool perks. They have all of the perks and O2 priority. And they also have EU roaming, but they don't have as good coverage. And of course, their pay-as-you-go plans still don't have 5G. It's only really Voxy and I think Free who currently do 5G on pay-as-you-go. So that's quite limited. Of course, for both of the people in the Discord right now, Farmer Josh and Piggus, neither of you are from the UK, so you probably don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to the mobile networks, just because, yeah. That's what's happening when it comes to O2 pay-as-you-go allowance increases. Do either of you have any thoughts? I don't imagine you would do, but sure.
More data, the better.
Yes. Yes, yeah, anyway, continuing on to a kind of bigger story. I mean, I could have headlined with this one, but I decided not to. The Competition Authority is consulting on a Vodafone and Free UK merger. So this could be quite a big deal because apparently this agreement could see Vodafone holding a 51% stake and CK Hutchison with 49%. And apparently, they're apparently looking to merge these two companies together. Of course, Free's previous merger deal was with O2, and that didn't go through. The CMA denied it. They said that it wasn't, they weren't going to allow that. Apparently, the European Court of Justice did say that Free operators is still a competitive market. However, this does not necessarily mean that this deal will go through, given this would be a pretty major kind of reduction in the amount of mobile networks in the UK, and I think it could be quite bad for competition. And yeah, I think having 4 mobile networks is a lot better than 3, but of course, this deal could go ahead. It would increase coverage, but who knows what will happen jobs-wise when it comes to people employed in the shops. Who knows what will happen when it comes to competition and prices. And in general, this could be quite a... this deal could turn out quite poorly for the UK consumer. But who knows? Do either of you have any thoughts on this major deal with UK mobile networks?
I don't really know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in the US, there are 3 major mobile networks, so I guess... Yeah, I guess it's...
The rest of the small players, they piggyback off one of the majors.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we have 4... O2, Vodafone, and Free, and they all, of course, all the other networks piggyback off those networks, just like in the US. So we have mobile virtual network operators as well. Anyway, moving on to the next story, another one from ISP Review, of course. It's a mobile network giffgaff in the UK, so that actually piggybacks. It's a virtual mobile operator which piggybacks off O2. So they have finally launched UK eSIM support. So previously you couldn't use eSIMs with giffgaff, but now this budget provider has provided this new way of using their mobile network with eSIMs. So of course, with the iPhone potentially only having the eSIM in the US, it's quite a good move to allow people to use the eSIM. Of course, I still use SIM cards. I mean, SIM cards, I don't see anything wrong with SIM cards, but giffgaff have moved to now support this new standard, so I guess that's cool. I'm fine with eSIMs as long as they don't get rid of the regular SIM cards. Have either of you got any thoughts?
Just a bunch of UK news.
Yes. But of course, let me look at my analytics right now. I am guessing the majority of my viewers are from the UK. I don't actually currently know. I mean, it's been a while since I've checked these things. However, yep. In the last 28 days, the majority of my viewers have been from the UK. The majority of my viewers overall have actually been from Indonesia. So, yes. I guess I should be doing Indonesian news. But yeah, anyway. let's continue on to the next story. Let's get out of the UK news so you two guys can actually comment on the news and not be like, oh, that's UK stuff, I guess. Anyway, let's move on to the miscellaneous section. The final section of the show. So, General Motors have added, or GM, have added a new API to allow you to allow developers to make apps for its cars. So the U Services API, so it's a new set of APIs for developers and is apparently a step towards GM's ultimate goal of the software-defined car vehicle. So apparently this is a new set of standards for interfacing with vehicle features and communicating through the backbone, servicing as a standard API to abstract vehicle services, enabling a unified connected vehicle ecosystem, or just that's corporate speak for just it's a set of APIs for your car to interface with car features. I mean, I could see some problems with potentially car hacking or whatever, although I don't think it's that likely, but of course there's always a risk out there. And yeah,
they've been able to hack cars for a long time now.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is a greater level of car hacking, like, yeah. I mean, there have been car hacks for quite a long time, though. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's down to the person in the car. If they're willing to take the risk that their app that they download could then suddenly just take control of their car and just steer them a certain way and smash their car into the wall or whatever, yes, while they're in it, then they...
Isn't that what you want?
then I guess they can, use this new app feature, and I guess developers could, do whatever with these apps and maybe add some cool features to cars, although I can't really imagine there being too much utility. Anyway, moving on to the next story, the AMC CEO has been a target of a blackmail and extortion plot. So apparently Adam Aaron was sent sexually explicit images, photos to a woman. Apparently he sent sexually explicit photos to a woman pretending to be an old romantic partner. So this is... I didn't know whether or not to include this story. I mean, it's not exactly a tech news story, but it's kind of quite a big story, because the CEO has been a target of this blackmail plot. But anyway, I don't really think there's really much point in going into too much detail here, but yeah, that has happened. Do either of you have any thoughts?
Moral of the story is, don't take pictures of your penis, kids.
Okay, so continuing on. Continuing on to the next story. So Outlook will apparently soon be able to write emails for you using AI. So the Microsoft 365 Copilot tool, of course, is being added, and that will mean that in Outlook, you'll be able to have the AI write you emails. So it's underpinned by ChatGPT, so that's the main thing that it's using. So, of course, you'll be able to write some interesting emails using this tool. I mean, if you still go with writing emails, this might be a cool feature. However, you've got to be kind of careful with what it is writing. Yeah. Also, I imagine with stuff like, if you want to put your sincerely or kind regards or whatever, you might want to do that yourself instead of just letting an AI pick which way to end an email or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because maybe it doesn't sense the situation or whatever, and just put whatever way of ending it, like, love whoever, and it's like, writing some formal email. Anyway, yeah, I can imagine there just being some, like, AI misunderstandings when it comes to what an email's about. But anyway, moving on to the next story. This is the last story before we end the show, and then we can go to the after party, I guess. So Best Buy will no longer carry movies in 2024, and apparently the person on The Verge says that they are no longer whole, because of this change in store policy, I guess. But of course, you know, it's quite interesting to see them no longer carrying physical movies. I mean, it's quite sad in my opinion, because Best Buy sold movies for many years in the US, and they were quite a major retailer of movies, and the idea of stores moving away from selling movies is quite sad. I mean, you can still buy them online, of course, but I think I still like physical media personally. I mean, I still listen to CDs. I still watch Blu-rays if I'm gonna watch movies. So yeah, so I kind of still hold on to physical media. So this is quite sad from the perspective of potentially it causing more stores to take similar action, and if this could end up being a domino effect where stores just slowly all get rid of their physical media, that would be quite sad. But for now, this is limited to the Best Buy stores. But yeah, Farmer Josh, as somebody from the US and as somebody who I guess probably prefers the physical media to digital media, I don't know, it's a guess. But yeah.
You're not wrong there. It's just the way things are going. Physical media is it's going the way of the dinosaur, unfortunately. But I had to learn how to repair my own VCRs for God's sake.
Yeah, so
I still have some stuff on VHS I've watched. So.
Oh yeah, I really don't understand why people like vinyl so much. Like, it's like CDs are way better than vinyl, but this is probably a debate. This is probably a thing to be talking
Getting back to that more physical interaction. It's kind of neat watching a record play, and the fact that
it costs way too much there. Like, it's like, why would you pay more for that? And but anyway, continuing on here. Yeah, so of course it's quite sad if you like physical media. Personally, I quite like physical media. Of course, here in the UK, there's still like HMV for buying movies and CDs, and you know, they're still a major retailer here. But they did have the threat of going into administration a few years ago, and they were in quite a bit of trouble financially. So of course, a lot of these stores selling physical media have not seen massive, kind of gains for doing so. And of course, it's it's kind of a bit of a dying industry, but it's sad nonetheless. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching.
It really is.
Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure to check out the Discord server. You can check me out on Library. You can check me out on YouTube if you're on the Discord. And of course, if you want to come back next week and you want to actually watch the show, it happens every 7 p.m. BST here on the Sandro Linux community Discord server. This happens every week here and on YouTube, so make sure to check it out over on the Discord, so that's sandrolets.com/Discord. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Goodbye from me. If any of you want to, yeah. And if any of you want to sign off.
Goodbye.
Yes. So, goodbye, everybody on the stream, and if you're actually listening